Welcome back, YouTubers. Thank you for checking out this episode of the Darwin Pond Show. Hey, Mentor1 here, and we're at episode 8. So in this episode, you guys are going to notice I did some video editing. It's about 23 minutes long or so. There's about 50 minutes of footage that I cut into this episode. I'm going to try to do that from now on. Combine about 3 episodes into one and cut out a lot of the more uninteresting parts. The die-offs, all that stuff. I'll still maintain a lot of the integrity of the episode. I just wanted to spruce it up a bit, speed it up a bit, try to get the seasons to 10 episodes, more content in each episode, more evolution in each episode too. So we'll be able to run the pond for about twice as long and show you half as much footage that will encompass that entire time. So hopefully you'll dig on the new thing. And my video editing skills aren't the best, so bear with me as I try to optimize the process and put on the best show for you guys. So in this episode, the triple rowers are the dominant species, no doubt about it. I don't think there's anything else in the pond except maybe for some mutants here and there. But we got color variation now. We got all these different species. Some separated, like these down at the bottom here. Quite a gap between those and the watermelon candy ones up top there, but there's some mingling of those purple blue ones with the watermelon ones up top too. Off to the left you get some stragglers. They're all the triple rowers though, so at this point it's going to be again, barring a mutation that is better than this species we see on the screen, which I think it's going to be kind of rare. I've never really seen a species that's this established be overturned by a mutation, so we're going to get a refinement of the species. I'm not sure if we're going to see a homogeneous color at all. I highly doubt it with how much variability, even within the species. Each segment has different colors on it, and they're going to be interbreeding, so there's going to be a lot of exchange back and forth with the color species. But yeah, we'll probably 1 or 2 more episodes. This is going to count as 8, so 10 will be the finale. Yep, so 10 will be the finale. I got quite a bit of footage in storage. I got to cut it, edit it all, narrate it. So get ready. The survivor is coming, and so is the parasite. So we'll see what happens. As you guys are familiar with the process at this point, these species are going to eat all of that available food, and you'll see an edit coming up soon where once they eat that food and it's obvious there's going to be a die-off, I'm going to skip ahead a bit and show you once the food repopulates to across the empty spots of the pond. I'll fast forward it to that point and you can see the result. So you got these purple people eater ones over here, the watermelon candy ones, all kind of mingling together, going for the last bits of food. And obviously, as we've seen, the ones that have that are the best suited to swim and get to the food, get to their mates first, are going to carry on. But it's probably very small variations at this point. You can see that as they're racing, there's a couple that are clearly out in front. That's only going to advance the species a little bit. I mean, actually, they're probably going to die off, actually. The ones that are racing to the food faster, because you got the food populating down to the bottom left, and that whole center left, top left area is going to be full. So they're gonna be dying off here soon. You can already see them starting to crash out there in the bottom right. And we're gonna say that's so the next extinction wave is on, and we're gonna see what species carries over to the other side. Alright, so you can see here we went ahead a bit to where the survivors have made their way to the new food source on the left, and it's still a mingling of the watermelon and the purple people eaters, I guess we can call them. You got a pocket of them in the top left, and you can already see it setting up now. You're familiar with how this works with the cycles. These guys coming over now into this new food source are their populations are gonna climb as they're eating, and then they're gonna run out of food, and the population's gonna crash, and the ones that have gone off in search of food away from the larger population groups, or the ones that have enough food to swim to the new sources of food, are going to be the ones that survive. And that makes sense. The ones that get to the food quickest, the ones out in front swimming, are going to have way more energy, and they can swim farther to find a new source of food. So the ones that explore and the ones that eat the most generally are the ones you see that carry the species forward. And it looks like the watermelon candy ones are actually dominant now that I'm looking at this bigger picture here. And you can see a lot of the purple stragglers there in the back. They're in like the center bottom area, and there's a handful of them in the center, just to the left of center area. But you got the watermelon candy ones up top in the center and the bottom left, but that bottom left, those guys are going to chew through that food. They're multiplying quick, and they are going to eat themselves into extinction over there. And it looks like, if you look in the center area, and you can draw an imaginary line across the center, you can see the mix of the small pocket of purple watermelon candy making its way in the center line up north. Yeah, see, these guys are going to be toast soon. There's still some food to be had here, so they'll be able to boost their numbers. The ones that obviously can store the most food are going to have the ability to get up here with these guys. Although, let's see, there's going to be a dilemma there, because of those guys in the center left there, that line that's creeping north there, they're going to eat all that food. So the ones in the bottom aren't going to have much left over. And this is, I mean, this is the situation we've seen constantly. I've been trying to elucidate some of the reasons why and some of the benefits of what happens. You know, again, food storage, exploration, speed to be able to get there, and of course some luck scattered in there too, because the food generates fairly randomly. You can set the parameters, but for the most part it's random. So all those guys in the center left, bottom left rather, those guys are toast. You can see some food scattered about. There's some stragglers swimming to the right, bottom right area, but there's not enough, I don't think, to have a stable population grow over there. So let's see what happens. Okay, so I fast forward a bit again, and this time the food had spread into that top area, the empty, and then over to the right. And as a result, the purple people eaters, which we weren't expecting to thrive, there were some of those stragglers that I told you about that are in the bottom right. If you want to rewind the video a bit, you'll see a handful of them wandering out in that area. And across the side to the top, they were the ones that met that growing food pasture first. And the watermelon candy ones mostly died in the bottom left and the top right areas, the top left areas rather. And the ones that had the food, enough food, have begun to make their way over. So they're still surviving, but the majority of them are these purple people eater ones. And I mean, we got what, 100 and something swimmers at this point. Not too bad. A lot of die-offs already over there. Those are the guys that swam over from the right side in their bid to find new sources of food. And you got a whole line of these purple people eater ones. Just, they're not really purple people eaters, right? There's blue and purple and I think yellow in there too. So whatever. I can't come up with that many names for species. I don't speak Latin. Alright, let's see what else we got going on here. Yeah, not really seeing any... oh, we got some color variation there with the green. And that swimming motion definitely is getting efficient. There's not as much, at least it doesn't look like to me, there's not as much drag backwards. And you can, there's like a handful of the watermelon candy ones you can see scattered around here. I'll be curious to see if that color scheme there survives. They're starting to mingle there, it looks like. So the only real difference now that we're looking at the colors closer is the tips, right? Green versus blue. Yep, so you can see the writing on the wall here, right? If you've been following along, you know the patterns. That line of the purple ones is going to eat all that food all the way up to the edge. You can see some breaking off and heading left already. And there you go. And there's the ones that will form the next gene pool that will repopulate. And of course the ones over here that end up housing the most food, the gluttons that they are. And it makes me think, though, it's like the principle of evolution, at least here, is that the fittest individuals get the most food, which enables them to swim longer, reproduce more, and drive forward the entire species as a result. Is that, I mean, in your opinion, guys, is that what happens, you think, in nature? That it's based on the fittest individuals driving a species forward? I don't know. One could argue that a cooperative social species that works to drive everybody forward at the same time would be pretty effective. You know, maybe I'm thinking maybe like an ant colony where there's castes or classes and they all work as a common unit. And of course it varies from species to species, but I mean, what's the most efficient method, you know? Because with that individual driving, you sacrifice everybody else. You run the risk of, at least in humans, you run the risk of getting the fame and glory going to your head, all that stuff. But these things are individualistic too, right? They don't. Their only motivation is eat and reproduce and do it as fast as you can. But that, oddly enough, is you can use that as the basis for any, even a complicated system. It might have more rules and layers to it, but are we that different? I don't know. Topic for discussion, I suppose, huh? Alright, so they look like they're about to exhaust their food supply here. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here shortly. Yep. Indeed it does. So the food's going to grow all on that left side now. Alright, so you can see here I skipped ahead to when the majority of those creatures died off. And we have the stragglers, which are still mostly these purplish looking ones. Bluefins, maybe we'll call them bluefins. Watermelon candy. Oh, there's a couple of them. Look at that. Bluefin, greenfin. Yeah, they're the same color except for the tips. Those green tipped ones just remind me of like a watermelon candy. I don't know. Anyway. So it looks like there will be some of those color variation, but they're not catching up to that guy in the front there. Now turning motion's gotten pretty good too. You see how quick he turned around there? That's not bad. Yeah, I'm watching them. If you watch them when they turn, watch this guy when he gets the food, and then he's going to probably grab one of those guys for mates behind him. Right? It takes him a second to say, okay, I got to turn, and then pretty fluid turning motion. I haven't really watched the turning mechanics in a little while, but I'm impressed. And from what I've seen, that's, I mean, straightaway speed is obviously pretty critical too. But that ability to turn efficiently in the direction you need to go shouldn't be underestimated. That's for sure. Yep, got a huge batch of that purple one coming in on the south there. That's going to do a number on the color variation. There's only a few different colors there. Most of it's going to be that homogeneous. Maybe we will see a homogeneous color. I don't know. I doubt it. I think there's still a lot of room with this species for mutation because of the four color segments and the interchange between them. You know, it's always possible the blue could creep up to the limb above it, or the whole thing could turn purple from the neck down. There's quite a bit of food that repopulates. See the stragglers up in the top right corner too? They might be able to get over into that pasture on the north, and you might see a new population group emerge up there too. Because we can see it, or you can see it happening already. I know you know the process by now. They're going to eat all of that food in the bottom left. The ones that can are going to make it out to that food. It's going to repopulate in the north and then down the side like a clock, just turning round and round. And it looks like look at the watermelon candy ones in the center left. There's like 3 little clusters of them, 4 little clusters of them. They are, wow, they are in a prime position to capitalize on the new food source up there. That's going to be interesting. So then, as we watch these guys populate and move, I would say there's a very good chance we're going to see them emerge as one of the dominant colors here, as these purple ones eat their way into extinction. Bye-bye now. Ran out of food. You see how the food is regrowing, but those purple ones in the top center are probably snarfing up a lot of that stuff that should be growing to the top right. They might interrupt that cycle a little bit because I see it creeping out in the center there, center to the right. Food is starting to move its way down that way. Yep. Wow, they could be setting themselves up for a really nasty event going on here. Because these bottom left ones are toast. And you got a little batch, yeah, you got that whole line of watermelon candy and purple right there is like semicircle around the top left food source. You zoom out a little bit. So you can see there's a whole line of them there that are going to make their way up into that corner, eating all that food as they go. And between the ones in the bottom left over here, who are already out of food, it looks like that small cluster right there. Yeah, see, there's a little breeding group there. And then the ones further up, if they continue to make their way to the right, those guys. Same thing with the watermelon candy ones there, but if the food goes down further, you might see some of those purple ones from the bottom left pull over and make their way. But, yeah, look at these. I think this group, some are already going right, but all those ones that are going to eat themselves into the corner. Toasty! You can see the color shifting. I mean, even if you skip back and forth in the video and just look at the big shots like this, you can see, you know, purple is the blue tipped is the dominant ones, the watermelon candy ones are dominant, and back and forth it goes. And with each cycle, of course, the best suited ones are reproducing more, and you're refining the species at this point. Again, I highly doubt we're going to see any mutations arise that are going to make this any different, because I don't think a mutant will outcompete the existing swimmers. And from the beginning, we did this within the environment in a naturalistic setting. You know, we haven't messed with anything, we haven't tweaked any genes. All of the original population was generated randomly, and it's not common to see a dominant species like we're seeing here emerge that quickly. I've seen some come out that were kind of like really bad ones, couldn't turn, couldn't move, just enough where they could eat and reproduce in a small area, but they didn't survive very long. Ones like this that are able to cover distance, they seem to reproduce fairly quickly. That swimming motion is getting more refined. They're able to turn very efficiently. So I'll be very curious, because the plan is in season 2 to take the season 1 survivor, put a pair or two of them in a new, randomly generated population group, and see if we get something else that emerges. Whether it's this thing again, further refined, or if it's a sort of a hybrid with something else that emerges from the local population, the randomized population. Well, so I'll be curious. I haven't really done too many of these types of long-term experiments, and maintaining a certain creature and just constantly going through trials and all this stuff. I do a lot of like one-shot experiments that I'll let run for several hours uninterrupted. But this is going to have some structure. As I said, we're going to introduce a challenger in the final episode. We're going to save the survivor to import into a new pond in the next season with totally different parameters. And we will tweak the parameters of the pond enough to make it a real different environment. So that is another challenge we're going to add to this species eventually, is can it survive in a completely different environment? And that I don't know. This pond has been pretty stable once we had the initial huge food thing that started that allowed the maximum population, and then we had the die-offs and all that other stuff, and that refined the population. And so this has been a pretty average pond. You can see the cycle and the graph pretty much is predictable, right? Food goes down, population goes up. When food tanks out, population starts to tank out, and then as pop tanks out, food goes back up, and on it goes. And that's because everything is in those median settings for the pond. And you have a stable population, it becomes much more predictable in terms of what's going to happen. So I think we see here, let's fast forward a bit. Okay, you can see what we thought was going to happen happened. I thought the watermelon candy ones might have made their way over to the side more and been able to survive a bit longer, but they didn't. Those blue-tipped ones definitely got over there faster. And they're going to have a field day over here. There's a couple of color anomalies, but for the most part, looks like we can see the color species. That's definitely the dominant race, if you will, at this point. There's a few mutants wandering around, I see. I don't know, fellas. Definitely tell they don't have much of a neural network, huh? I just keep repeating the eat ourselves into a corner and die, and then let the food repopulate. It's like a clock going around the face. Although they completely surrounded this food batch here, assuming there's a small pocket of watermelon candy ones there, bottom center. Certainly nice colors on these. Yep. So we know you guys know the cycle. Curious to see if you have any thoughts on which of these color races, quote unquote, will be the ones to, if there'll be a dominant homogeneous color. I mean, at a glance here, it looks like these blue tipped ones, right? But those watermelon candy ones still hanging in somehow. And we can see another mass die off coming soon. And we will be ending the episode on that note. So next time we pick up, we'll see this die off. And there's not a lot of food off to the left, if you noticed. It hasn't really regrown that quickly over there. So we could see a real big die off here, more so than we have before, because there's not a big enough food source to keep a population group alive over the long run. We'll see what happens. That's it for this episode of the Darwin Pond Show. Thank you for tuning in, and there'll be a new episode coming soon.